Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I have a card featuring products from Tupelo Designs LLC for Tuesdays with Tupelo. For the month of September, I decided to pick up that really adorable mummy stamp from MFT, or My Favorite Things, and I also got this stencil from Hero Arts called the Double Arrow Stencil. I've used it a few times, and I'm going to use it again today just so that you can see that you can get a lot of different looks and make a lot of cards with one particular supply. As much as I like to show you all the things I received in my design team package, I also like to give a couple of ideas for some of them just so that you can see the value of it, because I know not everyone is always getting brand new supplies. So in order to make sure that this stencil stays really well, I sprayed it with some spray adhesive. It's removable spray adhesive, which you can pick up at Tupelo Designs LLC. And then I'm going to tape it down to my craft mat. So the adhesive is holding the stencil to this watercolor paper really securely, and so no watercolor will get underneath those fine lines of the stencil. Now, I'm using the Koi Sketchbox watercolors, but you could use any watercolors you have on hand, but also you could use distress inks and just spray some water on them and get a similar effect. I'm basically trying to get a watercolor wash through a stencil. It's just a little bit different than what I did last week when I put distress ink through the stencil and spritzed it with water. The main way that it's different is it's a lot less vibrant. It gives that sort of washed out, very watercolory effect. And in this case, I'm combining a very purpley blue with a purple watercolor. I like the purples for Halloween, and I also find that purple is a color that's a little bit more tricky to find. And so I often am creating my own purple patterned paper because I just can't find any. And I'm making sure to overlap the purple and the blue so that they meld together and mix together. And also, if you want to get some variations in color with watercolor, you could add less water for a darker color and more water for a lighter color. And once I had the overall wash, I just flicked on some watercolor. So by adding a little bit less water, and then just tapping my paintbrush on my finger, it created some splatters down onto the watercolor cardstock, and I'm going to gently peel it up so that I don't damage the watercolor paper too much. I find that the spray adhesive does pull up at your paper a little bit, so it might not be great for thinner papers. Definitely recommend a thicker paper, and I definitely wouldn't recommend it for something like a vintage paper that's really super thin and delicate, but it's great for watercolor. So once I have pulled up my stencil, I've revealed my design, I am going to color the little mummy girl from MFT and then think about how I can assemble the card. Right there I was trying to figure out how I might get some of that sticky off of my craft mat, but once it dried it came off pretty easily. So I made an attempt to color the mummy and it got way too dark, but I just left it off their side there just so that you can see that when I'm recording on YouTube, I'm generally only showing you the sort of successful parts of the card. If something doesn't work out, that's not as, helpful to you guys, but there are plenty of mistakes made when I am crafting as well. I wanted to not leave the wrappings pure white, and I decided to use a little bit of black to get a gray. In retrospect, it might have been better to use more of like a brown to get that sort of like old bandage feel, but I wasn't sure how it would look with the purple, and I'm so used to adding a little bit of gray with my Copic markers. When I want to get dimension on white, that's what I naturally gravitated towards here. And I'm going to fussy cut out the girl, so I'm not super concerned about going outside the lines, which is making this coloring a little bit easier because I can lay the watercolor down on the outside of the lines and then pull it in towards the center to give that little bit of a rounded effect and just a touch of color because I don't want too much color. Then for the background, to create something interesting, what I decided to do was cut it with some Spellbinder's nest abilities. Any nesting dies would work well with this, and by cutting with two sizes of the die, I was able to create a layered effect. So essentially, I am getting a large outside panel, and then from that outside panel I cut one shape and then one slightly smaller so that there will be a little bit of purple in between. So I've layered this purple cardstock, underneath that watercolor paper that I die cut, and then the smaller die cut I am going to layer inside. And so there I'm trying to get some spray ink, and it's right there in front of my camera. So what I'm thinking about is I want to basically somehow distinguish this inner bit of pattern paper from the bit that's on the outside. And so I kind of go back to my fail-safe perfect pearls colored perfect pearls. I thought about trying to mix it up with something else, but I really wanted you to be able to see that purple all the way through the card, or the recipient to see the purple all the way through the card, and I didn't want to cover it up with another color. So now that that purple border has created a little bit of interest, I'm going to add on the little girl. I fussy cut her out, and she's also on the watercolor paper, so she's super thick, but just to give her a little bit more dimension, I put some foam tape behind her. She wasn't too hard to fussy cut, but if you don't like fussy cutting, Tupelo Designs LLC does sell the coordinating die. And then I stamp my sentiment directly onto that patterned cutout because it is a relatively light color, and so you can still see it pretty well. And then I decided to add a little bit of detail with these spider sequins. Tupelo has a wide variety of sequins, so I definitely suggest checking out what they have, but I thought that these are really fun for Halloween, and you could use any sort of embellishment you happen to have on hand, whether you have spider stickers or bat stickers, that sort of thing, but just to add a little bit more interest to the card and bring attention down to that sentiment. I tend to fuss around a lot when adding these things. Some people just have a knack for placing sequins perfectly random and it looking really nice, but I have a hard time with that. But what I'm generally trying to do is bring your attention from the top left to the bottom right, as that tends to be what looks good when you're, because in English we read from the top left to the bottom right. But I found that just adding the spiders wasn't really giving me enough of what I wanted. Like basically they were so big and that left large gaps in between. So I just took some purple sequins and filled it in. The person that I plan on giving this to is a big fan of purple, so I knew a little extra purple sparkle would be great. So that's it for my card today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in more crafting tutorials, including watercolor and seeing my hauls from Tupelo Designs LLC, please consider subscribing to my channel. I will also be sharing a lot more Halloween cards and soon some winter holiday cards coming up in the next couple of weeks. Thanks for watching. Bye.